So we'll call this meeting to order at 6:33, and our first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anybody else need to sign a suit? No.
So next we'll move on to public comments. Robert, if you could just send me the list.
I sent you that, Chris, but we have only one at this moment. It's Tammy Underwood.
Okay, so Tammy Underwood of Swanton. I've got a couple online too, so. So we'll do just like last week, or not last week, week before, 3 minutes.
Tammy, I'm gonna turn their mic a little bit for you.
This one?
This one is picking up everything, but the public access will pick up. I'm just gonna turn this a little bit. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
She's on the side of it.
All right. First, I'd like to start by expressing my complete disappointment in the fact that not one of the board members have the courage or the respect to attend these board meetings in person, especially since you're sitting in those seats because of the very people you refuse to face. That fact alone, in my mind, justifies an immediate vote of no confidence for each of you by the people. But no worries, one day the fraud will be rooted out of our voting system and you will realize the true concerns of the people when you lose your places that you hold now. Again, masks don't work. Stop being sheep at the expense of the health and the well-being of our children, not yours, ours, and take these ridiculous, dangerous, useless, egomaniac masks off of our children. Depriving children of oxygen and their right to an unencumbered education is criminal no matter what type of lens or rose-colored lie you choose to view it through, and you're all guilty. Get used to those words, you're all guilty, because that will apply to many things once this entire farce is all over and the world is able to see the complete truth, the greed, the incompetence, the ego and self-motivated agendas at the expense of the children and the families you took an oath to serve by running for your positions. By examining some of the information on the state site, you can get a real view about what is motivating everything. And I'm very disappointed in our governor as well, because he's obviously bought and paid for. Here's just some of the stuff that's on the site. Quote, we also wanted to make sure you are aware of a school vaccine incentive program we've been working on. I've directed the Agency of Education to reserve $2 million in grants for schools who achieve high vaccination rates. There will be benchmarks with corresponding awards as schools reach higher percentages. Funds will be awarded to schools when they reach those thresholds and submit grant requests with input from students. Again, Secretary French will go into further detail, but we're hoping to emphasize just how important it is to be vaccinated because it remains the single best tool we have to move from pandemic to endemic. So right there, they're admitting they've put a price on our children's heads. And I think that is absolutely disgusting. First of all, I know you're not going to answer questions, so I'll send these in an email afterwards. I want to know if we participate in that program. If so, if you've been awarded, or if you're going to be, how much you're going to be awarded, and what the terms are. Here's another interesting thought when it comes to promoting these vaccines for kids, especially since now they're going to try to jab kids as young as 5 years old.
Seconds left.
An EUA fact sheet for vaccination providers will replace the package insert found with the vaccine, while the EUA fact sheet for recipients will replace the VIS for licensed vaccines. So that tells me right there, they're allowed to put their own crap in with those vaccines and tell you whatever they want because it's under an Emergency Youth Act. So they're taking the truth out of the packaging and telling you what they want you to know. And governors,
Time is up.
you people are unfreaking believable.
Okay, so that's everyone that signed on the sheet, but I do have a hand raised by Kimberly
I
DeLong.
don't sleep anymore between having to fight these schools.
Don't worry.
Thank God I took him out of school. Between trying to fight these schools.
Excuse me, you're out of
and fight
order.
for jobs. I'm done. I'm done.
I don't-
I'm gonna figure out
Kimberly,
another way.
Yes, I
DeLong.
don't blame you.
Oh, go to hell.
I don't blame you.
Robert, you're gonna have to, I think, unmute.
I think I'm good now. Can you hear me?
Okay, yep, I can hear you. Go
Okay.
ahead.
My question tonight is more, again, I don't know if you guys are willing to answer it tonight. If you want to follow it up in the next board meeting, or if you can email it back, the answers. I was just curious for the panorama education, the mining, the education mining. How is that working? When did we sign up? And do we have the option to opt out of that for our children? I did not know about this until recently, and I'm not really comfortable with having my children's personal information kind of out there, along with the surveys that are being sent out. I'm assuming it's not being sent to first graders. That's what grade my daughter is in, and pre-Kers. I'm sure they're not as well, but I would like some more information as a parent on this. I think a lot of people in the district did not know about this until recently. And so I was just wondering, maybe a survey could go out, maybe a generalized email to the whole entire district so that parents can feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah, we can definitely reach out. I'm not sure we have all that information right now, but we can definitely reach out in an email.
Yeah, Chris, we are looking into some of those things and not ready to communicate about it now, but we will be doing that shortly.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments from public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on. First up is agenda review. I have no reviews or adjustments. Julie?
No, I don't either. I think we're all set.
Okay. So moving on, next up is approval of October 21st meeting minutes. I'd entertain a motion to approve those. Devin's the first, Terry's the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting October 21st meeting minutes, raise your hand. Motion carries 8-0. Okay, and now we're on to our presentation. We have EEI here to help highlight the recommendation from the Facilities Committee on how to work on or to utilize the remaining Highgate bond proceeds that we need to use this coming summer.
Hello, I'm Eric Lafayette with Energy Efficient Investments. As most of you guys know, we've won a performance contract with the Missisquoi Valley School District to kind of look at all of your guys' schools in your district as a whole and look at both performance upgrades and capital improvements that we can do at each one of the schools. As you guys know, this is a long approach. We're looking at both Franklin, the elementary school, the high school, but in this case specifically, we've been asked by the school district to focus on Highgate, the remaining $1.9 million bond that they have, and really focusing on the ventilation system at the school. So I've made a little presentation. I'm not sure if I can share my screen here. Share screen, here we go. Here we go. Pull it up. Slide
Working,
show.
Eric.
Okay, perfect. From the beginning. Let me see if I can pull this up. All right. so jump through this. So in this case, today's meeting, I'm going to kind of go over the goals of the project and then kind of go over what your guys' existing system is and some of the constraints that we're running into at the school, as well as some of the systems that we're going to be looking at and how we'll approach this over the next month or so. So right now, the project goals are updating the ventilation system, trying to add some kind of energy recovery into the system.
Eric, sorry, we're still seeing like the slide deck and like not the presentation.
Oh, my apologies. Slide.
Oh,
There you
we
go.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. So allow equipment to be accessed and easily maintained, the heating elements and systems where the budget allows, and then really working within the $1.9 million bond. We do have time constraints that's built into it. 80% of the bond must be used by March of 2023, and then 100% completed by September of 2023. So as most of you guys are aware, the original school was built in 1961. And over the years, they've done some additions. They've added roofs. When the school was originally built, it was a flat roof. They've since added this pitched roof. They've done additions of the kitchen, the cafeteria. They've added classrooms on the other side of the school. And really, for the most part, although Highgate's for the most part, a rural town, the actual school itself is pretty tight from a footprint standpoint. They're currently utilizing the white building down here. We've provided long-term plans for the school district to really move all of their main coursework inside the school. But that's not for today's presentation. Today, we're really just focused on how can we create a ventilation system that will last the school district a lot of years and then allow them to be able to make these changes in the future without significant added cost to the work. So getting into your school and just kind of going over the different areas, the core of the school, the 1961, and the multi-purpose room, and the 2 sets of classrooms on either side. And then from there, you have the 1989 edition. There's 2 1989 editions, one in the lower half down here, and the other being when they added the cafeteria and the kitchen back in 1989. The heating system's pretty typical throughout the space. They have perimeter radiant heat, baseboard heat around the perimeter. Inside the multi-purpose room, they have a couple large heating ventilators, which is pretty much just a unit that grabs some outside air with a hot water coil and provides outside air to the multi-purpose space. And the same goes for the classrooms. So getting into the actual the heating plant and the boiler system, you guys have newer gas-fired boilers. Obviously, the school is on natural gas. The Well-McLean cast iron boilers are 5-6 years old, and they should be good for another 25 years. So our project really is not focused on that. Inside the mechanical room, one thing that we did pick up on, you guys have redundant pumps. Last year, you guys upgraded one of the pumps with a new Grundfos variable speed pump. Well, you still have one of the old P.E.G original pumps up here. So part of this project would be updating this pump section here. So you guys do have 2 new pumps, and then really for the most part, your equipment in the mechanical room and your heating system should be good for the next 20 years. Getting into ventilation. So this is really where our focus is. Right now, there's ventilation. The gymnasium utilizes some units that are up in the corner. Like I said, they bring in outside air. There's a hot water coil in them. The units are pretty much constant volume. So whenever class is in session or whenever the school is being occupied, that unit is providing a specific amount of outside air. And then it's not shown in this picture, but there is an exhaust fan that's in the center of the school or in the center of the multi-purpose room that then exhausts the air. So there's really no energy recovery. There is no energy recovery. What you're doing is this unit is pulling in, maybe 30% of the total air that it does from the outside. And then your boilers are heating that air up, and then your exhaust fan is just dumping out probably 75 or 80 degree air because it's at the top of the gymnasium. So that's what does your multi-purpose room. The classrooms are ventilated through units that are currently up in the ceiling space. So each one of the wings, as you call it, has a heating ventilator, which is stuffed up in this ceiling cavity that you can kind of see here. It's tough to get a picture of it, but the unit almost goes wall to wall. I know one of the units in the 1961 wing is currently down, needs to have a motor replaced. In order to replace the motor on the unit, you actually have to drop the whole unit, to take out all the ceiling tiles. You got to disconnect all the ductwork, all the piping, and drop the unit down to the ground just to access the motor. It's very cumbersome. That is probably a 2 or 3 day process, I would think, just to replace a motor. Where typically, if this unit had good accessibility and you could get to it, you're talking maybe a 3-hour motor replacement on it. So the locations of the unit make them very tough to service. They make them tough to maintain. And really the 1961 wing is using the original equipment. And then the 2 additions built in 1989 are also using the original equipment. So you have some equipment in there that is 60 years old, these units up in the gym. And then you have equipment that in the 1989 wing, which is now 30 plus years old and also past its life expectancy. And the 1989 wing is set up the same as the 1961 in that there's no energy recovery. It's just you bring in outside air and exhaust fans, dump out the 75, 78 degree air, and you're really getting no mixing. So going into the classrooms, I took pictures of 2 different classrooms. In the 1961 classroom wing, you have some ductwork that runs along the front of the classroom that supplies air to the space. And then there's a single return, or actually exhaust grill that dumps the air to the outside. In 1989 edition, they don't have the ductwork that extends along the front of the class. It's just 2 vents that are in either side of the hallway of the corridor. And then in both cases, they're not shown on this picture, but along the windows, there is baseboard radiant heat in each one of the classrooms. Another thing when you're talking about HVAC encompassing the whole building, you get into the kitchen. The kitchen was also built in 1989. The kitchen has a lot of issues, and it really should be looked at together as a whole. So for this project and for our ventilation upgrade, we're going to leave the kitchen aside, and we're really going to focus on how do we provide ventilation to the classroom, to the multi-purpose room, and the cafeteria. The kitchen, for instance, needs there is no hood. This stove or range here in the oven should have a hood over it. There's no makeup air system. As you see over here, this is a dishwasher. The dishwasher should also have a hood over it, exhausting it to the outside, so you're not dumping all that humid air into the kitchen area. But that will be hopefully part of the next upgrade at the school district a year or 2 from now. So some of the other things when we were looking at this project, as always, whenever you get into the ventilation, there's more work that usually needs to get done in order for you to install the ventilation. So some of the, for instance, the electrical service to the school is only 800 amps. If we were to add dehumidification, which we are looking at right now, we'd have to upsize the electrical load to the school, which would mean a new electrical service and a new main distribution panel that would be going in. We'd also look at possibly doing some adjustments to the roof or potentially building a structure to the outside to house the new air handling equipment. And then try to extend the working schedule to allow work to occur while school is in session. We essentially have 2 summers to do this whole project right now. So trying to find creative ways that we can look at this project and what work can be done without disrupting, the normal operations of the school. Obviously, we're working within a timeline. Some things to think about is right now, a lot of the equipment is running 16 to 20 weeks. As probably people have heard in the news, there's a lot of supply chain issues, and that is also very apparent in the HVAC industry right now. So a lot of the major equipment that we'd be looking at utilizing for this project does have a 16 to 20 week lead time. So if this is something that, we do want to tackle this spring and this summer, coming up with a system and a design over the next month and a half or month is going to be crucial to be able to hit our timelines. And then depending on what options and what systems we go with, it's looking anywhere between an 8 to 16 month construction schedule. And that's building into the fact that school will be in session and that obviously you're not going to be as productive when the kids are in there than you would be over the summer. So some of the options that we've looked at. So just going back, I guess, and I'll fill people in, is the existing system that we're trying to get away from. It's tough to service, tough to access, and tough to maintain. It has lasted 60 years. I don't think my guess would be it's not providing consistent airflow to the rooms. And I'm sure over those years, it's probably been spotty, as it may work or it may not work. And I'm sure once it goes down, it could take maybe up to a month to repair just because the access to the equipment is so tough. Then obviously the constraints that we were talking about before, these attic spaces up here, you would think naturally would be a good location for equipment. Unfortunately, there's just not a whole lot of space when they built these. This equipment that we're dealing with for energy recovery, some of the units are 25 feet long, 10 feet wide, and 10 feet tall. So they're a major change from what they have now, which is no energy recovery. So the systems that we were looking at on the project and that we're going to continue to investigate over the next month are packaged ground mounted units. The structure itself has a lot of structural deficiencies, just that it was built in 1961 and they weren't really expecting 10,000-pound equipment going on the roof. So we're looking at potential options of doing ground mounted equipment and then ducting back into the space. So then the question goes, where do we locate them? How do we access them? And then how do we make sure that we're providing a better system with the new system than what they have today? We want to make sure when we design this that we are looking at the lifespan of the equipment and we're looking at the usage of the school so that we put in something that's not going to be ripped out in 15 years. At the same time, we want to create stuff that's going to be able to be modified and adaptable, because 2 years from now, we're looking at potentially doing a major school renovation to the space. And we want to make sure that the ventilation system that we install is going to work well with the new layout. Individual zoning of classrooms. So that means like variable air volume boxes with reheat coils, so that we're ensuring that classrooms are getting the right amount of supply air and that it's being tempered. One thing that I've brought up a couple times, and I guess I'll just expand upon, is the dehumidification aspect of it. So right now the school obviously does not have any dehumidification. That would involve adding refrigerant coils and condensers to the equipment, which would really be sucking moisture out of the space. The individual reheat coils on the VAV boxes would allow for some zoning. Right now, the school did go through a major controls upgrade with Temperature Controls of Vermont. So they do have individual heat control for each one of the classrooms. And we would like to maintain that same level of control per room. And that would mean going back with these variable air volume boxes with reheat coils, so that you're not only controlling the heat, but you're also controlling the dehumidification in the space as well. And then obviously, how do we maximize the investment, get the most efficient, long lasting, and easily maintained system? So those are our goals in this project as we look forward. Obviously, we want to give you priority one, let's get the ventilation system up to code. Priority two, let's make sure that it's energy efficient, because right now it's not energy efficient and it does not meet code. And then three, can we add dehumidification? Can we get better ventilation controls than what's currently there? And then how do we make sure that it's easily accessed and maintained? And then if there's money left over in the $1.9 million bond, where can we look at creating better heat situations? Because they do have some heating issues in some of their vestibules, corridors. And how do we make it so it's just a more comfortable space outside of the ventilation? And that's really what our goals are over the next month, and that what we will be working with the facilities planning team to come up with a final design and really understand the needs of the school and weighing cost with the system that ultimately gets picked for the school. That's it. I don't know if anybody had any questions for me regarding that, or.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions?
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time and I look forward to working with you guys on these next steps.
Thank you very much.
Chris, are you
So-
looking for a motion to move forward with the bond project? I mean, we have the proceeds and they're appropriate within the language of the bond. I just didn't know if you were looking for a motion.
I was going to do that just for more of a check and balance than anything, but so the recommendation from the facilities committee is to move forward with these HVAC upgrades. Through the committee, we did look at possibly renovating a section of one wing. We looked at a bunch of different options and we felt the best bang for our buck and return on investment was upgrading the HVAC system, which is antiquated at best. So at this time, our recommendation is to move forward with the Highgate HVAC upgrades. That would be our motion.
I'll make that motion, Chris.
Peter's the first, Don's the second. Any comments or questions?
Chris,
Don, go ahead.
I just want to thank Eric. I wasn't quick enough, but that was very thorough. And I think that's what we have come to find we need to do as we look at prioritizing our options. So I want to thank him. I think that the facilities committee feels very comfortable with what we're going to do. And again, it's because we have good information. So.
Yeah, I completely agree with Don. We've had many meetings discussing options and we spent quite a bit of time debating different ideas and stuff like that, the best way to utilize this money. Toby.
Chris, can you just give a recap of the funding for this? You said it's a bond that must have been passed by Highgate voters. Is that correct?
It was a bond passed by Highgate voters right before the merge. And out of it, we've used some of the money to fix the parking lot and we've repaired some of the white building roof. So the 1.9 is the remaining balance of the bond. And we have until, I believe it was March 2023, we have to use the funds, otherwise they go back. I believe it's 80% in March and then 100% has to be spent by September of 2023. Otherwise we have to return whatever we don't spend.
So then is this like the last one of, is this our last legacy district bond? Kind of like, if I'm making any sense, like does Swanton have something out there or does Franklin have something out there?
Franklin had a bond. I believe they just paid it off. I know Laura might have to correct me on that one.
Fiscal year 23 is the last year in Franklin.
So
And then we have
Franklin's
Highgate
will be done
and MVU.
23. MVU has a fairly new bond that was passed once again before the merge, but that one's probably got 18 years left on it. And I don't know about Swanton.
15.
This is the only,
Swanton does not have a bond.
this is the only bond project that hasn't been completed yet.
Okay, that's great. All right, I can't, the MU one doesn't really, I mean, that's been shared all along anyway. It's, I can't wait to get, it's one more thing that will help us moving forward, I think, as a single unified district. So thank you. That's it for me.
Peter first, then Terry.
I'd just like to reiterate what Chris and Don said about this project. Eric, that was a really good presentation. I was full on board with the HVAC upgrades anyways, but that definitely made me feel like it's the right decision after you went through that presentation. Everything with COVID going on, I think air quality in our buildings is critical, and the dehumidification, moisture in buildings is not good. So I think that can also help with the life of our buildings as well. So I am in full support of this project.
Terry.
I can unmute. Okay. I was just going to thank you, Eric. That was really helpful to see the pictures and showing us exactly where things were. especially, and it kind of goes back to what Toby was saying, this is actually one of the first shared bonds that we've had, like one of the first big expenses that other communities engaged in to help another community school. And so I think it is already a visible sign. We're already on that road of all working together. So it was really helpful for me, who hadn't seen Highgate in its entirety, to understand it so much. I mean, my kids went to Swanton, but I think we should, Toby, I think you were wondering, like, this is a legacy, but this passed right as we were getting going. So it's a joint effort from all of MVSD. I just wanted to make that clearer.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All those in favor of moving forward with upgrade to the HVAC and Highgate using the remaining bond proceeds, raise your hand. Motion carries 8-0. Thank you very much, Eric. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Have a good night. Appreciate your
You as
time.
well.
Bye.
Chris, not to interrupt, but EEI is proposing a meeting with the facility task force on Monday. And I just wanted to put it out there for the task force members due to this, kind of quick timeline that we have. And so Mike Davey has reached out via text to me to see if I could put that out there tonight. I can send
Monday
an
the
email as
8th?
well. Sorry.
Monday, the 8th.
Yes.
I can do that. Don? Okay, we're on board.
I will send an invite. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to administrative reports. First up's MVU. Dan, Jay, or Jen?
Hi, I thought, Jen,
I
are you ready?
couldn't unmute for a second. The host wouldn't let me, but I can now, so I'm here. So I'm going to start off tonight, and then I'm going to hand it over to Dan. We had a very wonderful celebration of Indigenous Peoples Day on October 11th. We were happy to be in school, and there were numerous different activities going on throughout the day, so that most of our students had some sort of experience that was directly connected to Indigenous Peoples Day. There's a full list that's linked in the administrator's report, along with the video clip that was on the Channel 5 News, which I hope you got a chance to see then, but if you didn't, it's there now. So we were very pleased with how that day turned out, and we have good ideas for the future as well. We're very thankful to the Parent Advisory Committee, which delivered about $600 worth of books from Indigenous authors to MVU and also the elementary schools that day as well. So we've enhanced our regular library, but also our classroom libraries with those texts, which is fabulous. We also held a vaccine clinic. I think it was the same day. Dan will nod if I'm right. It was right around then. We had seen that the vaccine clinics hadn't had a lot of participation, but this most recent one did. We had many members of our community in to receive their third shot, their booster shot. So it was a good success that day as well. I'm going to pass it off to Dan, who knows much more about Powder Puff than I do.
Yes. Powder Puff happened on October 6th. If you knew any of the student senior girls that participated, they did nothing but rave about it. It was a great success. And we raised a good amount of money for Camp Tecumseh and the Jim Bashaw Cancer and Catastrophic Illness Fund at Northwestern Medical. We don't know the total amount yet raised. We're hoping that'll come on out in mid-November by the time all the donations and everything come in. So we'll certainly let you guys know that, but we are hoping to surpass our all-time high, which was roughly around $27,000. And that's with both schools combined. So we're hoping to surpass that this year. On October 12th, MVU had an Ag Field Days. The agricultural and mechanicals teachers supported a field day to showcase the facilities to students. They participated in some mock steer roping, had some various activities, kind of showed off the facility a lot in an effort to kind of drum up some support and to drum up some interest in their classes. On Wednesday, October 20th, there was a senior parent information night. Jen and some guidance counselors held that. There's also a link to that presentation embedded inside the administrator's report. Also, there is a link to the latest newsletter that is also found on there. And one of the things, hopefully everybody had an opportunity to take a look at, or maybe if you've heard some kids talking about it, the National Arts Honor Society and Lindsay Didio and Ashley Bowen helped put up some Why You Matter posters. On the same day, faculty participated in this in the first couple of days when they came back to school, and students, when they had their pictures taken for school, also wrote down why they matter, and they held the picture up, the little placard up, and what they did is they posted those all over the school. And there's a link to the slideshow in there, which can be found on YouTube, which if you get a moment to take a look at, it's some pretty powerful stuff. And so there's close to 1,000 pictures up within the school as to why they matter. So it's really powerful. So if you get a chance, take a look at it. Just congratulations to Danielle Turner and Aaron Garso for their successful choral and band concerts. Hopefully everybody had an opportunity to take a look at that or to participate, to attend. Again, some sense of normalcy was great. It was good to see that many people back. So, and at the very end of the report, you'll just see some upcoming events. Of course, we have parent-teacher conferences on Wednesday and Thursday evening, 4 to 8, where parents selected times through Pick a Time. We have school picture retakes tomorrow in the morning. And then November 15th, middle school sports will begin, and high school sports will begin November 29th. Already thinking about that. And also in there is embedded is skit night. Again, hoping to for some sense of return to normalcy. And that's it. Any questions? Toby.
Can't hear you, Toby.
Sorry about that. A couple things. I just wanted to say the band concert, I think it was a great turnout. My wife, I didn't get to go. I had a meeting here, but my wife said she couldn't believe it was a packed house, and she thought it was great. And I think it was a great return to normalcy, or some of that anyway. And people just must have been pent up, and they showed out in force. And everybody, she said she thought everybody was wearing a mask, which was great too. We had compliance there, no issues. The other matter is on proficiency grading. I especially now, a lot of seniors are a little nervous and apprehensive. And I don't have a senior, but I have two younger. And I think in general, I know I've talked about this before, but a couple things I'm kind of really curious, and I'm thinking more long-term. I don't know if the school currently keeps track of scholarship money that MVU gets every year. This might be a portrait of the graduate project too, maybe. I think we need to watch that as a board if our students are missing out, if we see drastic drop-offs in scholarships that we are maybe not eligible for because of proficiency. I don't know if that's true, but I think it's something as a board we should be aware of, and I'm hopefully the administration is too, because I think there is a perception that regarding proficiency, and if it gives our kids a disadvantage for that type of issue, though, especially college-bound students, but it doesn't have to be college-bound students, could be any trade school students too. So I'm wondering if that can be somehow worked in to track that, and maybe even college acceptance or trade school acceptance or whatever. I just want to be sure that we are doing what we can to help our students get to that next stage. And I think there's a lot of perception, which isn't always reality, about this proficiency. And it's still new for us, especially this year with this group of seniors, I believe. So as a board member, I hear that, and I truthfully am a little bit concerned about it too. So I just hope we're on top of it, because I know there is some differences on how the schools are using proficiency, which doesn't help, because then they're saying, well, why does our school do it this way when the neighboring school does it this way? And it leads to some animosity and anxiety already in a tight situation. So I'm not expecting any, I just wanted to provide that. I don't expect any answers, but I think those are really real concerns for seniors particularly, but by then it's kind of too late. So That's all I have to say about that. And I don't want any response. Just keep it in mind. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments for MVU? Terry.
I would, to follow up on what Toby just said, I think there is a time when you all tell us some of that stuff. There's like an update where we learn some of those things. So I would love to hear more about it when we're there and you can tell us all the good things you're doing, etc. So I forget when it is that you have that scheduled, but it would be nice. Okay, thanks. I also just wanted to mention that to those of you that we do have an ex-board member who got off last time who works at one of the universities in Vermont who has volunteered to come and help in any way she can with admissions. And I'm sure she can, she can speak to both trades and college. So that might be a great asset to follow up on. If anybody wants that information, I'd be happy to provide it later.
And just to say that we have reached out to all of the colleges, including that college, in the development of the final graduation information that's put there. I think the team did tremendous amount of research and work. And hopefully for those folks that are able to come to any of the presentations, and I think you're right, I think we'll do another presentation so that we continue to get that information out there. That all of those things have been considered. I think we've learned a lot from other schools that adopted earlier. We've learned from some of their mistakes too. So kudos to Jen and Tyler and all the other teachers and administrators who worked so hard on the research on those issues.
Not seeing any other hands. Thank you very much. And we can move on to our next next administrative report, which is from the superintendent.
So I just wanted to start by thanking everyone since it's beginning to be the season for gratitude. There isn't one conversation that I don't have with somebody this fall, inside or outside of education, that's talking about what a challenging year this is. So I am very grateful to all of our administrators and our custodians and our nurses and our support staff and teachers, every single bus drivers, everybody is going above and beyond and dealing with the word unprecedented. It started to be overused, but it is unprecedented challenges that our folks are facing this year. So I'm just so grateful for them and the work that they're doing. I know many people say that it's November 2nd, but it feels like February. So I just want to highlight a few things beyond that. And then if anybody has questions for the other central office administrators, I would open it up to that. I also added the Why You Matter link because I thought it was just so beautiful and powerful. So the YouTube link is right there. And then I really wanted to talk about our Portrait of a Graduate relaunch. Thank you to Terry and Joanne for attending the relaunch. I use the word party loosely with little air quotes, but we had groups in each of our schools that then met together, and then we met as a group virtually, and we did our little kickoff, and I included the press release that we had there. We did some getting to know you activities. But the real purpose this year is that students will meet together with some youth facilitators in each school, hopefully some adults volunteering to support them in each building. I'm going to try and go to as many as I can, and that we will collect the data of what are the characteristics that are most important for our graduates to have. And we started that with a thought exchange that I put in the press release. It didn't seem to make it to any newspapers, so we'll have to get that out again in a variety of ways. We'll put it out on Twitter. We'll share it with various select boards and things like that. The link is there for you all too. But we did a live version. I'm just going to share it with you quickly. see if I can make this work. And you're able to do it live, and then I keep it open. So we'll have the link sent out via email, and it'll go out to families, etc. And the students will then look through the data and people's responses and find themes and patterns, so that then they can do their analysis as the student. Oh gosh, I'm just trying to think of Terry, of their student research process. So as you can see here, we had 25 people participate that were present at the launch, and they, between them, shared about 50 thoughts, and they rated 650. It was really about 5 minutes. It was a little longer because some of our students are younger, and it took them longer to type and work through the process. But
I think it was the adults that took longer than the kids.
But for example, just the beginning, some of the highest rated thoughts were students should be responsible, trustworthy, patient, and flexible. Kids should be accepting of other kids. Members of our community should have strong people skills. They should be kind and compassionate. Be respectful, golden rule. Get along and work with other people. Empathy. Listener, trustworthy, patient, caring, confident. So you can see a great deal of what the students and others that were present thought was important. Listening, social skills, learn about different jobs, learn about real life problems and money, respect. So you can see that this data will be very powerful. This is just a very small snapshot. We will reach out to more students. We will reach out to more adults in our 3 towns, both in and out of education, parents and non-parents, and we'll really use that as a jumping off point. So at the end of the process, the recommendations will go to the board, and the board will engage with the Portrait of a Graduate group of students and talk through and hopefully adopt. It's usually 6 traits that are adopted. And then the students will probably do some other action research around, what's next. Terry, did you have a comment?
If I could, if you don't mind, it's just, I had 3 6th graders in our group, and Coach, you were there too. And they were so great. I was really impressed with them, but I was so touched by the fact that they were so adamant that they wanted students to respect their teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really a great thing to hear, because we hear of how hard it is for teachers these days. But these kids, when I said they don't respect their teachers, it goes, no, sometimes they're mean to them, something like that. It was really sweet. But also important, I think, because if not every kid is respectful to their teachers, that is a change we want to make.
So those were the things I wanted to highlight for you from my portion of the report. And I didn't know if you had questions for any of the other administrators. Their pieces are there. I hadn't planned for a lot because I think next month we're going to be having a presentation, or not next month, but the second meeting in the month, a presentation from the after school program.
So any other questions for Julie or anyone else in central office? Seeing none, thank you very much. We can move on to new business. First up on new business is the VHI unemployment insurance.
Laura, am I going to have Bonnie take the lead on this?
I think it's me this time.
Okay.
Bonnie's been working closely with me though.
Okay.
I will share my screen. Okay, can you see a spreadsheet on your screen now? Yes, okay. So some of you might remember that a couple of years ago, Bonnie and I had brought a proposal to transition our school district from a straight reimbursable unemployment employer to a BISBIT insurance unemployment insurance employer. At that time, our unemployment costs were shared, our annual employment costs, which are strict reimbursable. We are charged for claims. We pay the claims directly that become our liability. At that time, our costs were fairly low. This was prior to the pandemic. And the first year, our rating, we were actually going to be established in a rate class of 6, which at that time was the highest rating. And so it was going to actually increase potentially in year 1, our unemployment costs. I think after that, the costs could have gone down, and there were some benefits that we'd be paying for as an insurance carrier. But at that time, the board decided that that was not something that we wanted to engage in, but that we were able to bring that idea back in the future if we thought that it would be important. The last 2 years, I'm sure everybody's aware, the Department of Labor has had many, many struggles with all the unemployment claims. There have been also many, many fraudulent claims. There have been people receiving benefits that were not entitled to benefits, and that we were not exempt from those issues. To say that Bonnie has spent hours, days, weeks, months disputing claims, trying to reach out to Department of Labor, and she actually is assisted by several other people who then have to back up the information that she's trying to provide. It's become almost undoable, and quite frankly, communicating with the Department of Labor has become a huge problem. They don't mail our correspondences anymore. They said they don't utilize the mail anymore. So oftentimes we're not receiving any information to dispute claims. And it just has perpetuated the problem even further. So what I wanted to share with you in this spreadsheet is the fact that we've gone back to VSBIT and investigated the insurance portion again. I do want to share with you that, here's our historical spending and unemployment. You can see all the way from fiscal year 18 all the way down to fiscal year 23, which we don't quite know yet, but down to 22, we've gone from 27,000. Then when the pandemic started, we had actually went up to 40,000, $35,000 a year. This year, we're on track to be at least at 30. With VSBIT insurance, we would be set in a rate class. We would be pooled with other people. And we had sent in our preliminary wage data for the current year, and they actually accepted us at a rate class of 3 this time, which is a much more favorable rate class than we were previously had been in. Part of the reason for that is our gross wages have increased significantly. So when they do the calculation, we've actually paid less of the gross wages to unemployment. We have increased number of employees, and also COVID, the pandemic issues are really not being held against us right now. So for us, it's kind of an optimal time to maybe look at this again. The rate class 3, you can see in fiscal year 22 would actually bring us down to a premium of only $14,876. That would be for a full year. What we're asking is to potentially look at doing this for only the second 2 quarters. So it would just be about half of that. As you can see in my notes here, we'd be at just over $7,400 for the last 2 quarters. So we'd be a straight payer for the first 2 quarters. The last 2 quarters would be we would be a VSBIT insurance member. And rate for next year, fiscal year 23, it would be a potential increase of 0.03%. As you can see here, our rate structure could change, but our class would not. So we'd be guaranteed to stay in the rate class of 3 and not increase. After that, we would continue to be pooled. So other districts like us would be with a similar rate risk category would then be pooled, which would help kind of level out these peaks and valleys that we've seen, jumping from 27,000, 24,000, all the way up to 34,000 from year to year. Even more important than that, I would say, and I'm sure Bonnie will agree, and I'll let her weigh in a second, there are many, many benefits to becoming a VHI unemployment insurance member. I think 90+% of the school districts in the state of Vermont belong to VSBIT for this benefit. They provide administrative support, and like I said before, this is really something that's become a massive undertaking for Bonnie and then other people supporting her in that work here. They help dispute the claims, and they have a very, very high success rate. When they're disputing a claim, they're not trying to communicate with the Department of Labor on their own about one person. They're disputing with legal support, and they're disputing multiple claims at a time. And so their success rate is higher. They also provide an electronic submission and tracking. It's called Equifax. And so we can literally log in, see all the information. Department of Labor actually logs in, shares the information. So the timeliness, the access, the reporting, all of that is much more efficient. It would also allow me for consistent budgeting. We would know that consistently we'd be in the, at least for the next few years, the $14,000 to $16,000 range. And it would be just a flat premium rather than paying to reimburse these claims. Again, the pooling. And then it's just, I believe, limits our liability. I think it makes it a more manageable process and a manageable expense. Whereas right now, with the pandemic, it has really just become a huge liability. Like I said, we were paying on claims. We were being told by Department of Labor to pay on claims that we knew were not our responsibility, but they were so far behind. There would be penalties and interest. And by the time they reconcile, if they reconcile, but they actually sat on the phone with Bonnie and I and said, don't hold your breath, but, pay this bill. So we would have support in fighting those kinds of situations. Bonnie, I don't know if you want to add any other points that you feel are important or kind of emphasize on any of those.
Yeah, I think you covered most of it. Some of the bigger things is that the Department of Labor has changed their practices since the pandemic. So they actually just let me know like a week or more ago that they're no longer sending notices through the mail. So it used to be that I would get a notice of separation when an employee terminated and filed for unemployment. And that would be my opportunity to explain why they were no longer employed, et cetera. And we're not getting that anymore. They do occasionally call or reach out, but it's variable who they reach out to, despite how many times we've asked them to call me. Occasionally, Laura has voicemails, Sue has voicemails, etc. We experienced a lot over the last year and a half with this that I think other school districts did not. One quarter, we had no backups for our reconciliation. So we received our quarterly bill, but we had not received our monthly statements. And that was another instance separate than the one Laura had mentioned, where I called and they said, we don't have them, you just have to send it. So it's a really tough link between HR and fiscal when we don't have the backup to even support some of the stuff that we're paying on. And they said, we're short staffed too, sorry. So it's really, it's a cost savings as it is, but the benefit to it and in the support that they provide and the battles that they fight on our behalf, they have free legal support and everything with it, which is really, I think, really valuable. I sit in hearings myself on occasion, so it would be nice to have that support behind it too.
And so I shared all the documents that are necessary. The information that we've had to provide is on this spreadsheet as far as gross wages, the number of employees over $8,000 and all that, the different information. But there is an agreement. There is a listing of all the school districts in the state with their classification, their rating, that I also provided in the drive. But we would ask, I think Bonnie and I would ask that the board consider making this change for the first quarter in 2022 and changing from a straight reimbursable employer to a visit insurance premium employer. Lastly, I will mention, sorry, I did put a note down here. The first year, I want the board to be very clear that you're understanding this is a 24-month commitment. So it is a 2-year commitment. It's because you do end up being pooled, and it has to do with the structure and the calendar that they have to follow to get their ratings. They're always working a year ahead. And so that's the reason they ask you for that. After the 24 months, you can leave with a 30-day notice.
Don, then Terry.
Thank you, Laura and Bonnie. I just want to say that in my mind, this goes beyond the money. We have people who are working very hard every day, using all the strategies they can to keep the operation going during these times. So for me, this is a respect thing. I think we need to take and move this forward on the fast track if it's next meeting or next month. And I'll vote for it, even if I'm in the minority, because I've worked with VHI, and I just think that there are other more important things people can do than try to work with a dysfunctional system. And it's always been dysfunctional in Vermont. I can go back 40 years. So certainly Laura and Bonnie, thank you. And I, for one, will be saying, go forward.
Okay, I was going to agree with Don. I was just wondering why we're waiting for half a year before we started.
They request Department of Labor needs 45 days to turn this around. To be honest, Bonnie and I have been wanting to bring this back for a few meetings, and this is the first opportunity we had to put the work in and do the research and get it together. So I apologize for the delay in that. Yeah, but we need about 45.
I did not mean it that way. I just meant if we can do. Okay.
Yeah, I would do it yesterday if we could. That's how convinced I am, but they do ask for a 45-day turnaround, and Department of Labor may actually take longer than that, but VSBIT requests 45 days.
We listed it for discussion because we wanted to have the discussion first and then probably bring it to a vote next meeting. Is that correct, Laura, that your plan?
That was our original plan. If the board was comfortable making a motion tonight, that would be fabulous. But I understand we worked as quickly as we could. So, and we were not certain that we could have all the information tonight. Honestly, VSBIT turned it around in about 2 days, which was remarkable. So whatever the board is comfortable with.
I got just a second, Peter. I got one quick question. Is it VHI or VSBIT?
It's Vermont School Boards Insurance Trust that we would be purchasing.
Okay. So it's
Yeah.
written. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Peter.
So, I don't know how it was warned. I'm not looking at the warning if we can even approve it tonight. But either way, I assume that you'll bring this back to us in 2 years to see how we're doing and if we want to continue so we have that option.
Yes, I would need to, because this agreement would only last that long. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and to Chris's point, for some reason it says VHI unemployment insurance instead of VSBIT unemployment insurance on the agenda. I'm gonna assume I did that. So I think it is important that we do it to the next meeting.
Okay, so at this time, we're going to table it to the next meeting, but I'm all for it. It seems, unless somebody disagrees, I think we definitely want to move forward. Seeing no hands, I would say we want to move forward. Okay, next up under new business is our FY23 budget draft 1. There is one part of the budget draft I would like to recommend to go to executive session, the professional salaries part of it, just because we just entered negotiations and we haven't even met yet.
Thank you, Chris. I would agree on that. So I did put draft 1 of your fiscal year 23 budget in the shared drive. I tried to work with Julie to share my screen, and unfortunately, again, it's very small. So if anyone would like to pick up a paper draft, I can enlarge it for you. Please feel free to do that. Or I can try to fool around with a version as well and email you a larger copy. It's just very hard to share with a shared screen perspective and be able to see it. I did also include budget draft notes for draft 1, as Chris said, and as was outlined in our budget process schedule that I handed out in this first draft. It primarily includes, or it just includes, salary and benefit increases. As Chris said, we will talk about the professional salary increases or what's included in this draft in executive session potentially. But I can speak to a few other items. We did include educational support staff positions at $1 increase per hour per position. That's already been negotiated. Non-union staff reflect an increase of 3%. That's purely as a starting point and for discussion of the board at some point. Health insurance premiums, just a reminder, those will be negotiated at the state level this year. I am anticipating, based on information I received from the state to that regard, that we still will end up somewhere with the 80-20 split. So 80% of the premium paid by the employer, 20% paid by the employee. I can't guarantee that, but it sounds like we'll be right in that ballpark. Some school districts will not be close, and that will be a big change for them. Premiums are anticipated to be once again increased significantly. So 12% increase is what we used on premiums in this draft. Dental's been level funded for a couple of years now. We've included a modest increase in this draft, 3%, just in case. Haven't heard any information about where that might end up, but I don't anticipate it being any larger than that. For informational purposes, we've also included in this draft kind of worst case scenario as far as positions are concerned. We have included, and I tried to list these out in the notes, all open positions that we currently have in this year's budget. We've rolled those into 23. I've listed those in the notes, as I said. I've also included all of the ESSER funded full-time positions. We're funding other tutors and other part-time things also with ESSER funds. And supporting, after school programs and things like that. But these are a listing of the full-time positions. So there's social worker, classroom teacher, special educator, interventionist, nurse, and a full-time sub. I've included those to continue. That does not mean that they will continue. It's just, I think it's important to see, what all in would look like if we did continue. My proposal for those would be that over the course of the next couple of years, as the ESSER funding phases out, we maybe transition a few each year, but this includes all of those at this time. So what this drafting includes right now is an increase of 2.1 million. That's 5.62%. We'll get into some more detail on that in executive session, I believe, as far as salaries. Before we include the open positions or the ESSER positions, that would only be a 3.64% increase. So I did include that kind of comparison in the notes as well. I think that's important. As we move through our next drafts, again, what's outlined in the budget schedule that I provided is that we will provide more notes. I will break down each one of these salary lines into FTEs as we did last year. We will also start to estimate contractual increases for things like transportation, purchase services, leases, and things like that in the next draft as well. So please take a look at the budget draft that's in there. I understand it's small. I apologize. It's, let me see, almost 20 pages long. It's just difficult to share virtually. But if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now, or again, email, call, stop in. I can give you a copy as well.
Chris, I have a question.
Go ahead, Don.
And I don't know if this is a Laura question. This may be a Dan or a Jay, and I probably ask it every year. But when do we get a sense of tuition students, whether it's going to stay level, going to increase, going to decrease? Because that's a revenue, it's not an expenditure, but it is an impact.
Realistically, that would not happen. I don't want to speak for Dan if he was going to speak, but realistically, that won't happen until, the February, March, or even later. So that's kind of after the fact. We will anticipate when we calculate a rate calculation. I'm not sure if MVU does some kind of a survey or a census about what interest might be. But for us on the revenue side, it would be much later.
I think we have traditionally, but I guess on that, when I was looking more, how many students do we have as seniors, and whether that's a real large senior group in relationship to other years? I mean, usually for students there, unless they've told the school they're unhappy, they're going to continue as freshmen, sophomores, juniors into senior year. But I know some years we've had a lot of senior, not a lot of seniors, but relative to tuition students, it's been a bigger number. It might be 5 or 6 or 8 more, which may be hard to replace. So it's just a general thing, because I say it is a revenue that is important to us.
We won't know until some of the students for school choice until after March, and then which students come in from sending schools. I mean, like, anybody from Alberg or anything like that, we won't know until a little bit later. And of course, we don't know how many seniors are going to take advantage of early college. So we won't know some of that until potentially May.
Typically for budgeting, we look at a number of years history so that we estimate in a range that we feel comfortable with. And then we would typically talk to administration to see if this looks right to them.
Thanks for the feedback.
Any other questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you, Laura. We'll revisit some of this in executive session. But for now, we'll move on to the next item under new business, which is a side letter for teachers covering an additional class.
So we've been working on this with the association for a while. This side letter would apply to all teachers, but the strategy in particular is to address the challenges we're having at MVU with teachers with having to cover classes, and they're not there for the entire block. So there are a great many study halls that are happening. And while this side letter would not solve that problem entirely, it would go a good way to allow teachers to be paid to cover an entire class. They'd be giving up their prep period. We've worked with the association. Our hope would be math teachers in the math department would figure out the coverage and rotation for covering math periods. The same with English language arts and social studies, et cetera, so that like department teachers would have a plan for this, and it would be paying teachers an additional amount of money to cover that, to go without their prep period. I think this will, I don't know if Jen or Dan or Jay have any comments there, but, or Bonnie, because Bonnie worked directly with the association on this side letter.
It would also prevent large numbers of kids having to go to study halls, which is what's happening. So if we can get a teacher to cover, certainly as Julie explained, within the department, having an English teacher cover an English class and not having to send those kids to a study hall is fantastic.
Any other questions? So we would have a motion at the next meeting for this, or are you looking for one tonight?
If you could, it doesn't say action next to it. I apologize for that. But we are looking for a motion to authorize you to sign that side letter.
Okay.
I'll make
this
that
time I'd
motion,
enter-
Chris.
Huh?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Peter's the first, Terry's the second. Any discussion? Devin.
I just want to make sure everyone's aware that I do have a conflict of interest on this because this contract covers my wife, so I'll be abstaining from this.
Okay. Peter.
So I think Dan probably already answered my question, but I was curious of what is happening now. So it sounds like kids are currently being put into a study hall because they don't have a classroom teacher. So I'm assuming now we'll get more education or more in classroom time.
Prior to COVID, a lot of our substitutes that were here all the time were older. And since COVID, we've lost a lot of those substitutes. We have hired, using some of the ESSER funds, we've hired some full-time building substitutes, a couple of them. Unfortunately, there's just not enough of them. Today, if I'm correct, I'm trying to think exactly, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but I believe we had 6 classes, 6 teachers that went unfilled today alone. We just can't find enough substitutes. There's just not enough workers out there. We just can't find enough people to substitute. So we had 6 teachers that went unfilled today. So if you say each teacher taught 2 to 3 classes, that's upwards of, somewhere in 12 to 18 classes of kids that went to study halls and did not have a teacher there. This would help if teachers were willing to give up their prep block and get this chunk of money, they would be willing to come in and cover the class. That's what we're hoping for. Just one other way to help alleviate and solve a problem that is just exploding this year. And it's not just us that's seeing it, it's everywhere, but we're trying to come up with some kind of way to help alleviate this problem.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I believe we're ready to vote. All those in favor of accepting or allowing the board chair to sign the side letter, raise your hand. Against? Abstentions? Motion carries 701. Devin abstained. Okay, last under new business is first reading of policies, and the first policy we have is public complaints about personnel.
So this is our first reading of these two policies, the Board Goals Committee slash Policy Committee looked at the input of the board and administrators and have a plan to bring a couple of policies a month, hopefully, to the board to work through. We would, I've shared these with you. If anyone is having any trouble putting comments in about these, I'm happy to just email me and I will help you do that. But we want to make sure that you all have an opportunity to comment on that, and any community members that look at them on the website under warned policies can send a comment to us as well. And hopefully these fairly straightforward policies can be warned for adoption at our next meeting.
So any questions or comments for these policies? Toby.
Julie, I have a question on the, I was really reading closely the school facilities. As far as the fee, it says there'll be a fee structure developed, but my feeling is that there should be an ability for the superintendent and or the board to waive the fee if they're community-based groups.
Yeah, typically, Toby, oh, sorry.
Yeah, well,
Typically,
so
the procedure takes that into account. So if it's a
Okay.
community group, there's not a fee unless there's a, and then if it's a for-profit organization, it's a different situation.
So that's in the fee structure, then it's not specifically stated in the policy, but it will be handled in the fee structure, which is
In a
referenced
procedure.
in,
Mhm.
okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to old business. First up on old business is check warrants for October.
I apologize, Chris. I should have mentioned this earlier. I was unable to access our financial management system due to an issue with my VPN this afternoon. So I was not able to. Can we table the warrants until the 16th, please?
Okay, so we will table check warrants until the next meeting. And moving on to negotiations update. Not a whole lot to update. We met as a negotiations committee. I think it was last week. And we kind of got a game plan going. I don't believe there's a meeting scheduled yet for us to meet with the professional staff, but we're trying to arrange that now.
Mhm.
It has to be one arranged by the 15th, I think, November.
Yes, I heard from the association today that they do want to exchange a proposal by the 15th. And they sent us a different version of ground rules that we should discuss. I would expect that more of this update you would want to have a finding for executive session due to premature knowledge, putting one or more parties at a substantial disadvantage.
Okay, we'll discuss that in executive with the other topic. So unless Terry or Joanne has anything to add, we can move on. Good. Okay, now we're on to other business. Board goals committee group.
I think we're pretty caught up. I think Julie did a nice job of catching up on what we did, and I'll let the other committee members speak to this. Joanne, I know there was something we had talked about you mentioning too, but the one thing I remember is that we're going to try, and Julie said this, we're going to try and bring two policies every month to the board. So the first week of the first board meeting will be to review it, and the second to approve it, hopefully. And we thought we'd try some that were less well, I don't know what the word would be, but we thought less controversial, but then we thought, well, anytime we think something's going to be simple, it's probably not. So it appears that so far, these ones aren't too controversial. We haven't heard anything yet, but we'll give it time, huh? So hopefully that'll happen. And then does anyone else on the committee have anything? I feel really happy about that. And we've had other people join our committee, which has been very helpful. Thank you, Peter. And Coach is going to come in our next meeting, right? So, and we did change our meeting time. I thought that was important for everybody to know. Instead of having it the third Wednesday of the month, which comes right before the third Thursday and right before a board meeting, we've changed it now to the second Wednesday of the month at 6:30. So update to everyone. So our next meeting is November 10th. Does anyone have anything they want to add?
Peter.
I can let the other committee members go first if they have something. I just have a question.
Thank you. Joanne.
Mine, Peter, if you want to keep talking about the policies, that's fine. I was just going to bring up the idea that the group, the committee had about the calendar of events. So I can let Peter go, that's fine. And then we'll just end on my thoughts.
I just wanted to commend you for the aggressive trying to get two policies in a month. I personally think that's a pretty aggressive take, especially considering we're coming into budget season and we're going to be spending a lot of time doing that. So I'm just going to say, don't be too disappointed if we don't do two a month, because I think it is, I mean, we want to get these policies passed, but we want to have time to review them and go through them thoroughly at the same time. So just a thought.
Thank you, Peter. It is ambitious. For sure.
Seeing no other hands, go ahead, Joanne.
So just real quick, one of the comments that was made, and I will give the credit to Peter. It was something that he had mentioned about possibly having just a calendar of events. We know that we represent 4 schools, and there's, you know, a lot going on with these 4 schools. So sometimes it's hard to say, you know, if I do have, you know, a free evening or something interests me, you know, what was that we had talked about. So I know, Julie, thank you for putting it out this week. It was skid night. She sent it as an invite. So when Julie does that, or any one of us could do this, it doesn't have to be Julie. It goes into our calendar, and then we see that there's, you know, an event that's going on for the week. So just interested, and you don't need to answer tonight, something that you can think about. If that's something that would interest when events are happening. I'll use Mr. Hartman as an example with the ag. He invited all of us, I feel like personally, which was very, very nice. But that's something that, you know, we could have, I could do it, you know, when I see a principal invites all of us, I could easily do an invite to the board, and then it'll be a reminder for the board if, they want to go take a look at it. Do we look at the calendar? I guess that's the other question is, do the board members use the calendar, that we have in Google? So that would be the other question. So just something to think about, so we can try to be more proactive about participating, going to events that are happening. Like I had it in my calendar for a Portrait of a Graduate to go to last week. I'm happy that I went. I will definitely go to as many of those as I can to spend that time with students and their energy. It's really good for me to get out of the house and to be with the students. So thank you for the invite. I think it was Kosha that sent it out for Portrait of a Graduate. But the other topic was just if the board members would like to see those on their calendars.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments for board goals or board policy? Seeing none, we can move on. Next up is future agenda items. Already for next meeting, we're going to have check warrants, the VISBIT insurance discussion, and then we're going to have a presentation on the after school program. And then we still have a presentation for the SRO on the docket. Is there anything else people would like to see in a future agenda? Terry?
Just the policies, that second reading of the policies, that action.
Yeah, that's more of a every meeting
Okay.
carryover. This is more something that's not, I only mentioned the check warrants because we actually had to table them. Normally we don't.
Thank you.
Toby.
Yeah, I know I've communicated with you and Julia. I do think sometime a board level presentation on proficiency would be good. I'm not in a hurry, but in the months ahead on how we're doing proficiency and how it compares to neighboring schools. And I would like to hear from the athletic program at some point as well. And I kind of have something budget wise with that as well, but I think it's a matter of perhaps executive session. I'm not sure. It has to do with budgetary and athletics, but so I'll leave it at that for now.
The athletics, we usually have 2 presentations a year from John Lumsden. We did miss the fall one because of our end of summer, just because of everything being so crazy, trying to get school open back up. But we'll definitely have John Lumsden back again for another presentation.
I would say probably the first in December, as the winter season is our longest season. Jay, just nod if you think that makes the most sense. I thought.
Chris or Julie, talking about items, every once in a while at our meetings, early college is mentioned, but it's usually just kind of a casual comment. I would be interested at some point in time hearing more about early college. I mean, I'm quite familiar with the program because I was in the legislature when we debated this, whether it was a good idea or not a good idea, but I'd like to hear what's happened at MVU. Are we losing our best students or good students? I mean, I've heard that from other schools. Oh, they take the best students and they're no longer part of our student body, but maybe just a little history and any kind of feedback we've gotten from students who have participated in it. As I say, it's probably after budget. You're probably talking April, but throw it out there now.
We typically, thank you, Don, because we typically, and I say typically, like we've been a school board for 10 years, but in the past few years, we've tried to have guidance come in the spring and sort of go over some of the projections for next year. And, I think Tyler does a nice job when she presents to the board. So I think that would be a nice presentation.
Well, that's why I'm throwing it out now, because I don't want it now. We have too many things to do, but as she plans her presentation. She always does a good job, but I'd like to see her incorporate a little bit more about early college
Yeah,
for information.
that's good feedback for us. Thank you.
Jen.
There.
Thank you. I'm like, I can't unmute. Two things, but I think since they're kind of sensitive issues, if I could just like ask if it's during executive session, if that would be okay.
Sure. Okay. Any other future agenda items? Seeing none, our next board meeting is actually going to be on Tuesday, November 16th. We moved it because our public space in Swanton was already booked the 18th, and our last meeting at central office was too crowded. So we really wanted to be able to have a bigger public space. Hence, we changed because normally we would be the third Thursday. Well, we moved it up to now we're the third Tuesday. Same week, same time, 6:30. Probably the exact same format, virtual with the public space. But it'll be Tuesday, November 16th. So at this time, I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session at 8:05. Terry's the first. Joanne's the second. And I would say we'd invite in Julie and Laura. Would we want Bonnie as well, or?
I think that's Julie and Laura is perfect.
Okay, so we'll invite in Julie and Laura.
Chris, can we just state the reason legally why we're going into executive session? I know it's
To
budget,
discuss
right?
negotiations discuss the budget around salaries, and the reason why is because we are entering negotiations and we haven't actually met yet.
And an update, a negotiations update.
And a negotiations update and a sensitive future agenda topic item. I'm sorry, who was the first on that? I didn't write it down. Terry was the first. And the second was Joanne. Thank you. Sorry about that. All those in favor of entering executive session at 8:05 with inviting in Julie and Laura, raise your hand. Motion carries 8-0. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night.
I'm going to drop out, everybody, since this is all teacher negotiator related.